What Juices You, where we explore what energizes leaders and how that energy fuels performance, connection, and growth. I'm Brady Wilson from Juice Inc. And each episode, I sit down with leaders. We talk about what fuels them, what sustains them, and the lessons they've learned that can be helpful for all of us. Today, I'm excited to have Ginny Priem on the show. Ginny is a podcast host. She's a master coach. She's a keynote speaker. Honestly, I could literally go on and on, but I got to tell you a couple more things. TEDx presenter, best-selling author whose work focuses on leadership, emotional intelligence, and sustainable success. Welcome to the show, Ginny.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
We're going to start with a question I've been asking leaders literally for 20 years. It's kind of an odd question, but what juices you? So what is that thing that you wake up with in the morning and you go, yeah, I don't have to fuel it. It fuels me. And it's a reliable source of sustainable energy. But I want to put a finer point on it for you. You've got a book that I hope people are going to buy today called Unsubscribe. It helps people let go of things that are no longer serving them. By the way, brilliant name. You teach people to unsubscribe in 4 ways: block, mute, swap, manage. I hope we can get into that. But when it comes to helping people unsubscribe, what is it about that juices you so much, Ginny?
Oh, that's such a great question. And it's such a unique angle. So I love that. So when it comes to unsubscribing, kind of what juices me specifically around that comes from my own experience of really being at this point in my life where I was completely overfunctioning. I was being who I thought everybody else thought I should be. And unsubscribe helped me, and I know will help others come into more alignment with themselves. And that's what juices me.
It's such an evocative term, and it feels to me like when I do it, there's a little wee part of me that's a little bit guilty. It's like, disloyal. And there's another part of me that it's just emancipation, right? And I'll bet you, as you describe the unsubscribe process, that both of those are there. Saying no to something that I truly need to block would have just a tiny bit of guilt, but also a huge, immense amount of freedom in it. So take us through a little bit about what you've come up with, because I think it's going to be super interesting for our listeners.
Brady, would you be open to doing a little exercise really quick?
Absolutely. Cannot find somebody who's more open.
Because I love how you explained feeling different emotions around unsubscribe. And so I can tell people how I want them to feel, but we can show them, right? How I hope it makes them feel. So if you're open to it, and if you're listening and you're in a place where you can close your eyes or just like gaze down, what I want you to do is, you and I can do this together. So start by just like clenching your toes, tightening the muscles in your feet.
Yep.
Tighten your calves, lift up on your knees, clench your quads and your hamstrings, and yes, even your butt muscles, your abs, your core, your oblique muscles, your chest.
I don't have any abs. Okay.
Your core. Yes. You have to have a core. Tighten your core, your chest, clench your fists.
Yes.
Your forearms, your biceps, your triceps. Scrunch your shoulders all the way up to your ears. And then all of your face muscles, tighten them all up and take a deep breath in. And now release and exhale everything. That's how I want unsubscribe to feel for people. For me, I describe it as a big release, a big relief. And sometimes I think initially when you start doing it, like you and I've talked before about perfectionism, people pleasing, some of these behaviors that high performers and leaders often feel, or, mechanisms or coping mechanisms, behaviors that we participate in. And when you start to let go of those things, there can be some guilt around that, right? Because you're not used to having a boundary, saying no, not participating in things that you don't want to participate in. But it's just like with anything. And that's kind of why I had you, tighten all of your muscles, because unsubscribe is like a muscle. It's something that you have to practice, put into practice, and keep doing, and you continue to get better at it.
The perfectionism it feels to me like it is just so part and parcel with my entire identity that to have a practical mechanism that can allow me to hack into that stuff would be super, super helpful, because I'm the person who doesn't need to be contributed to. I am the one, thank you very much, who will offer help and contribute and get stuff done. I don't want to be the anchor in the relationship. I want to be the one who brightens everybody. And so that's my identity. And now you're saying, wow, we got to unsubscribe from some of those things because it's just unsustainable. So I feel like you're going to give us some things that are so super practical and mechanisms that we can actually hack into that deep identity thing that seems to be so ephemeral. So talk to me a little bit about the practical aspects of these mechanisms.
Yeah, so specifically, since you were talking about perfectionism, specifically, perfectionism is actually fear-based. Fear of
Mm,
not being good enough, fear of not doing something good enough. And so
yeah.
the easy swap for that, so swap is one of the pillars of unsubscribing. We can get to all of them, or,
Yeah, I
whichever
want
ones
to.
you'd want to focus on. But an
Sure.
easy swap for that is like, that's a mental thing that we tell ourselves. And it's something done is better than not started, right? Something done is better than, something done imperfect is better than not done at all. And, I think that you have probably worked through some of that because you have this amazing podcast. If you were still waiting for it to be perfect, right, you would have never started. And I
Mhm.
say that, and I'm not saying that your podcast isn't perfect, but I'm saying it from someone who
It's
also has
not.
a podcast. And I tell people, even today, I'm like, please don't go listen to the first 6 episodes. Like, start at
Yeah.
episode 7 because the first 6 are so cringe. But if I would have waited for it to be perfect, I still wouldn't have a podcast today. And
Hmm.
so it's that fear of starting something because it's not perfect enough. But look at all the great work that you're doing and the people that wouldn't benefit from it if you hadn't started. So an easy swap is that mental, sometimes those mental things that we tell ourselves that are false, right? That this isn't good enough when really it's great.
It feels like so much, there's so much story in here, that narrative that I play in my head, that it's got to be perfect or I can't start. And I can imagine that every one of these four aspects of unsubscribe gets to a story that may not be helpful. And in fact, may be highly pathological in some situations. So is that true? Is you're trying to get at some of those stories and reframe or recategorize them?
So the beauty of unsubscribe and and the reason why there's 4 pillars is because it's so applicable. Like when I do speaking engagements, the most magical part about it is afterwards when people come up to me and tell me what resonated for them or how they're going to apply it. So the
Yep.
principles are simple, but the way you can apply them to your life at work is so vast, and that's the most rewarding part. So each one is designed to address challenges or problems that we're facing in our lives, and we all have them, right? Like whether they're small or big. So the reason why I developed 4 is because it kind of helps address things that are the most urgent or important, down to things that we're going to completely eliminate that we don't have room or space for anymore. So if you want to start with manage, I can kind of tell you some of the
Yeah.
framework of why. So manage is for the most important things,
Mhm.
maybe people that we can't completely unsubscribe from, right? Like we can't completely block. So these are, and so why I like manage and I like talking about relationships, because have you ever had a relationship in your life that was difficult?
That's a
kind of
rhetorical question.
kind of a rhetorical question, right? Like we've all been there. So that's where manage comes in most for me with my history of experiencing narcissistic abuse. Sometimes there are people in your life that you can't eliminate. So how can you manage that relationship in a way that is palatable for you? Maybe it is
Yeah.
a coworker or your boss that you don't love, or a family member or a
Yeah.
friend that's just, maybe they're going through a rough time and there's a little friction right now. So you can manage that relationship in the way that you interact with it.
Yeah.
If you get together once a month and that person is just an energy vampire and they're completely draining you, maybe you back it down to once a quarter and see how that feels.
Yeah.
Or if you spend 90 minutes with somebody every time, maybe you try 60 or 30. So the duration. So the frequency, the duration, and then maybe the type. If an in-person interaction is too draining, maybe you try a phone call or a Zoom, or you have to back it all the way down to text. So
Yeah.
you get to then create parameters that work for you. And I want to be clear about what unsubscribe is and isn't. It
Yeah. Okay.
isn't just about flippantly walking away from things. It is intended to be accountable, for you to be accountable and actionable, right? So that's why I give very specific examples of how you can apply it. So that like manage, I love to use when it applies to relationship because tends to be something that everybody can relate to where they've been in a
I
high
bet.
friction kind of situation.
Hmm. It's not an unexamined no where, okay, I'm tired of everything. I'm checking out and I am now just going to be the no meister and you're talking to the hand everywhere. Like that doesn't serve that person. It doesn't serve anybody around them. So you're not taking a binary response here. You are offering something where there's much more nuance, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. And it applies at work too, right? If something's not working, like say you are, you're working on a team and you are the leader of the team and there's again friction or somebody's not pulling their weight, right? Like you have to sometimes manage, or if you're the leader and you're completely overwhelmed, maybe you have to manage it by delegating. Or maybe you're just completely stuck on a project and an idea. Maybe you have to manage that by pulling someone else in for help. Right, so there's
Yeah.
a lot of different ways that we can apply it.
One of the biggest challenges we have, Ginny, in the leadership world is helping build the challenge function. And so the ability to push back on things that are not working, to challenge what's not making sense, to be able to say in a conversation, you know what, I'm noticing that in terms of airtime, it's actually not even close to an even split right now. Like it's like I'm just tracking. It's 80% you and 20% me. And I need it for me to feel valued and respected. I need it to kind of a little bit more like 50-50. But that challenge function can be really difficult for people. But I can't imagine you could be successful at the manage pillar if you aren't able to step up and speak your truth.
Well, and that's what I like about unsubscribe and the language is it gives a common language which makes things approachable. So if
Mhm.
everybody's speaking the same language, then it doesn't feel like a threat. If they say, "Hey, look, we're all facing this challenge right now. Can we figure out a way to manage this situation?" Right? And if everyone's speaking the same language, now it becomes approachable. It becomes a team effort and people don't feel that threat of like, "Hey, I need this," right? It creates kind of a collaborative approach.
It does. And what I hear you saying loud and clear, but I think people could misconstrue it is what we don't want is for a person to feel managed.
Yeah.
That's not
No,
what you're saying.
no.
But what we're managing, so we're never attacking the person, we're attacking the problem. We're not managing the person, we're managing the situation or the context, which is, I think, a lot. We never want the person to walk away feeling managed or manipulated or controlled.
That is such a great point, and unsubscribe is never about trying to control anybody else. It's about you, right? It's
Mhm.
about and that's really what, I think the word boundaries gets thrown around a lot, right? Like that thing of saying no, but boundaries aren't about controlling anybody else. It's simply what you're willing to participate in and what you're not. So even if you think back to how I just explained manage in relationships and time, duration, and frequency, that's just
Yeah,
what you're willing to participate in. It's
yeah,
not about controlling that other person. It's controlling and managing your own time and resources and energy.
yeah. On my little grid here, I've got that on the upper left-hand side, which is, oh my goodness, it's urgent and it's important. But on the lower right-hand side, I've got something that it's not urgent and it's not important. And I see you just going, Brady, block it. Can you
Mm.
talk to me about what's block look like?
Block looks like complete removal and elimination. This is something that no longer serves you, that doesn't work for you in your life anymore. Maybe it never did, and
Yeah,
you're just now realizing it and recognizing
yeah,
it. And again, this can be a lot of different things. Like, so for me, I have decided to block narcissists and toxic people from my life. Like, and I'm talking, and if you do, like, so if you've gone through a breakup, right? I
yeah,
mean, block no creeping on their social media, no having somebody else stalk them, like a complete block and
Right.
removal and elimination. For some people, this could look like block alcohol, right? Like for people that can't or don't want to drink alcohol, that's a very big trend right now. So it can apply at work, it can apply at life. There's a lot of things that if it's not working anymore, why do we continue to force it? It's a little bit of that sunk cost fallacy where people
Mhm.
are like, oh man, I've already invested this much time. So I just want to continue investing to see if the result's going to be different. But that's the definition of insanity. So this is hopefully something that, generally when people do remove something, maybe it's a job, that's not working for them anymore. Maybe it is a relationship. Maybe it is a thing that they have a bad relationship with in their life. It's generally, I don't ever hear anybody say, man, I wish I would have hung on to that longer. They have that feeling of that release and that relief that we, kind of experienced just a few minutes ago. And they go, man, I wish I would have done this sooner.
Yeah. So this is one that is a bit more binary in a very helpful way and liberating way. One of the ones that I was super interested in that I think could be really helpful for my audience is swap. And so it is not as important as manage, but it is urgent to do. And so give us some examples of swap, because I think that could be really exciting for people.
So one of my favorite spreads in the book is in the swap chapter.
Saw
And
that.
I
Yeah.
give a ton of ideas of swap this for that. And I actually loved how you opened our conversation talking about the mental things that we tell ourselves. And that's where I think swap can come in really handy, whether it's things that we tell ourselves professionally or personally that aren't very helpful. And it's important to keep in mind that our thoughts create our feelings shape our mood, and then our mood becomes our reality.
Mhm.
So, what we tell ourselves is critically important. And this is something that, again, it's a muscle. So, practice this. And so, if you're somebody that struggles with self doubt, we start to swap that for confidence. I am good at this. I did do that well. And maybe you're not going to be like, oh, I suck too. I'm the best, right? Be realistic about it. Say
Mhm.
something 50% kinder, 20%, 10% kinder to yourself. So a lot of it is these thoughts. We talked about guilt earlier.
Yeah.
Swap that guilt for giving yourself a little grace, right? For making a little bit better decision for yourself. Giving yourself permission, swap hate for love.
Mm.
Very powerful one right now.
Yeah.
There's, overcommitment. This is a big one that I talk about in my own story. Overcommitment, over functioning, over performing, being everything to everybody. Swap that for alignment with yourself and who you really are.
Mm.
Um, it can be like, this is another one, where at speaking engagements, I had a team of people that were so excited. They were like, oh, we're so excited at work because we get to swap doing payroll by hand to now getting an electronic automated system. So they were really excited about that swap at work. And, and then some people had fun with it. They're like, well, we're going to swap red wine for white wine. It's so people can have fun and be playful with it as well, but a vast array of ways that we can apply swap. It could be also something as simple as exercising, right?
Oh
If
my goodness. Yeah.
if you are a runner and you're injured and you're like, man, well, I can't run, so I can't do anything. Well, you could swap for maybe a walk. Something instead of having like this all or nothing black and white kind of mentality. That's where swap can really come into play and be helpful.
I wish you knew how much you were reading my mind right now. So I slipped on the ice, snapped a quad muscle, and it's all bundled up at the top of my leg. And so, yeah, running not work, but I went, well, I don't have to not do anything. I can walk, right? I can't cycle, I can't row, I can't run, but I can walk, and I can actually lift weights. And so, just it's a helpful, I think. It just takes us away from the black or white binary, either now or either or, all or nothing. So it's really beautiful. You've also got another one that's interesting, and it's mute. And so this is not urgent, but it is important. And so there are things that you're going to mute. Tell us about that.
Mute can be applied again in so many different ways, but this is taking a temporary break or a step back from something. It could
Okay.
be as simple as if you're sitting at your desk and you are completely frustrated and you're stuck in something, get up, take a break from it, call it take an emotional lap, right? And just
Hmm.
come back to it and see how you feel. It could be taking a temporary break from a relationship. If anyone has ever, like, here's a very tactical, practical application of it on Instagram. Have you ever hit that mute button on somebody because for whatever reason they were just rubbing you the wrong way? That's a really great application. Or dry January. A lot of people participate in taking a 31-day break in January from consuming alcohol.
Yeah.
And then, but it's again, it's actionable. It's taking accountability, going, okay, at that 31 days or at that 30 days of taking a break from this or 7 days of taking a break, how do I feel? Do I want to continue the mute? So these aren't just siloed pillars. At the end of a
Hmm.
mute, you might say, do I want to continue the mute for another 30 days? Do I need to block it? Or is this something I can now manage? Like, again, if we go back to the alcohol, because that's such a relatable,
Sure.
such a relatable one, is it, okay, now I'm going to manage and I'm just going to have alcohol Thursdays through Saturdays. Or, so you can, or am I going to swap it for a mocktail 3 times a week? There's
Hmm.
so many ways they all kind of flow together. So for whatever reason, I love that we went in that order because that was really fun to show at the end how they're not just siloed pillars, they're really designed to be fluent with one another.
Hmm. When you see somebody who's taken your work and it's just lit them up and they're seeing massive application and it's really working for them, what does it look like?
What does it look like when I see people
Yeah,
applying
so
it?
I'm like, what does it look like inside that person when they send you an email or they finally meet you in person and they go, "Oh my God, I've been reading your book and I applied it here, here, and here." What does their life look like when they have really put unsubscribe to work?
I think it looks like a lot more self awareness, a lot more emotional intelligence, a lot more confidence in decision making, because this really is designed to help you make better, faster, clearer decisions for your life. I think it helps people become more of themselves. And that's the end goal, right? Because that's what it did for me and what I really hope it does for others. So it's really rewarding, especially at the end of like keynote sessions where people come up to me and they, show me their notes or tell me how they applied or how it makes them feel. And sometimes people have tears where they're like, wow, this is like a really big revelation for me in terms
Hmm.
of, things that I've been carrying with me that were just expectations that were put on me that I accepted that I never wanted or asked for in the first place. So I think it can look like a lot of lightness. Because I think you use the word like what lights them up. And I think
Hmm.
that kind of goes hand in hand.
I love it when there's somebody in our life that when I'm around them, I am more of who I really am meant to be, and my true potential. I find myself actually just sliding into it. There are other people who are quite the opposite, but for some reason, there are people who allow me quite fluidly to be my best self. And I love that, what you're saying there, because I do think if we think about the narcissist for a second, it actually matters to them that in their presence you actually need to be absorbed, you need to be dissolved, you need to be consumed, like you need to be so much smaller so they can be so much bigger. And what you're describing with unsubscribe is the exact opposite, right? It's not that you end up being diminished by helping somebody to do this, but you clearly see that they really step into who they were meant to be. Um, Tell us a little bit about, yeah, I've got this view of humanity that a lot of people are just trying to do their best. But I also recognize that there are narcissists. There are, 5% of the population are sociopaths and psychopaths. And yikes, the amount of horror and the waves that follow them are very significant. And I think so. One of those types of people is the narcissist. You've got a story around that, and I know our listeners would just love if you just give us a little bit of that story. Could you,
Yeah,
Ginny?
absolutely. Um, and then I would love to, if we have time, I'd love to circle back to actually, I'm going to start with this and then we can get into the story of
Yeah.
Chad if this is okay. It's a really quick analogy, a story that I haven't shared in a while. And I love this because I think it really paints a powerful picture. So there's a study conducted in Kenya in the 1980s where a group of researchers were observing a troop of baboons. And
Yeah.
within that troop, there was three subgroups. There was a group of aggressive, abusive, domineering male baboons. Then there was a group of more amiable males. And then there was a group of females that were empathetic and loving and nurturing.
Hmm.
That aggressive, abusive, domineering group of baboons went out searching for food. And they came across a container of meat. And instead of taking that container of meat and bringing it back and sharing it with the rest of the community, they selfishly devoured it themselves.
Of course.
And it turns out that meat was tainted
Mm.
and they all died.
Mm.
So you can speculate on what's going to happen to the rest of that community. Do those amiable, friendly males now become more domineering and abusive? No,
Unfortunately, no.
no.
I was gonna say yes, they will.
The contrary. So what happened when you remove that toxic, abusive, aggressive, domineering behavior, what they observed was a group of empathy, support, love
Mm.
emerged. And that's what happens when you apply unsubscribe in a way of removing things that aren't healthy, that don't work for you anymore. And that's exactly what happened for me when I started applying unsubscribe after going through my horrific experience with an abusive narcissist. So the story goes back to, and I hope that I like to share that to kind of give the visual
Yeah.
you can maybe even put yourself in that situation, right? And be like, oh, which group am I in? And then, what happens when you start to remove it? And that's exactly what I hope people experience with unsubscribe whether it's a toxic person or other toxic things, you know, thought processes in our lives, when we remove them, it makes space for what matters and what is more meant for us. So for
Mhm.
me, I was living my best life. I was in corporate, high leadership position, leading high performing teams, traveling all the time for work, traveling a lot for fun, spending time with my friends, my dogs, having a great time. And I get introduced to this guy, Chad, and I was not interested. Um, because I had such a good life.
Yeah.
And number two, he had two kids. And so I wasn't interested in going there. I'd been there before and he broke my walls down and I fell in love with those two kids. So we kind of formed this instant family. They move in here to my house, he and the two kids. And of course, they go back and forth between, my house and their mom's house, who she's
Yeah.
amazing. And we're going along. I have this instant family. And instead of stepping on the beaches in Greece, I'm stepping on Legos and, movie nights with popcorn on Fridays, just like what I never imagined. But
Right.
I loved it more than I thought. Even, school pickup and drop off and packing lunches in the mornings and, all of that. And I was really happy. Like I was surprised at how happy I was in
Yeah.
this scenario. And life was good until one day I had a friend reach out urgently wanting to meet at 10 p.m. for cocktails on a Tuesday. And all day I was wondering, what is going on with her? That's so big and so urgent. And
Yeah.
I get there and she displays an arrangement of evidence about Chad, this man that was living in my house.
Yeah.
He was basically living a complete double life, a fraud and a monster in every way. He was pretending to be a chiropractor, performing medical adjustments on people, and he did harm people. He was a financial fraud. He was on like fetish sites and in swingers clubs and abandoning and neglecting and abusing my elderly dogs when I was traveling for work and he was supposed to be watching them. Just horrific in so many
Yeah.
ways. And it really shattered and imploded my life. But it is the reason why I do the work that I do today.
Right. First of all, I felt like I was getting all tensed up again. Even though I was listening, and then the dogs, and it's like now I have to just kind of let it out. Yeah. So extricating yourself from that, you would have needed all these tools and more. Can you talk a little bit about what that looked like?
Yeah, for me, it was a complete block for Chad. I mean, I felt like I had been violated in every way, right?
Yeah.
The psychological and emotional abuse, my home and my space felt like I had been violated. The physical, the risk that he put me at, for my own physical health, just with
Yeah.
his negligence.
Hmm.
It was all really scary. So for me, that was a complete block. And it
Yep.
started to put me in a position where I had to really analyze and look at my own behavior. Why did I
Hmm.
allow this? Not that I
Right.
ever blamed myself for his bad behavior, but I did allow this, and him into my life. And what I realized after doing a lot of deep digging and soul searching and understanding myself and my history, my family of origin, is that I had a history of enduring narcissistic abuse. And so his behaviors and patterns were familiar to me.
I see.
And sometimes there is comfort in familiarity, even if it isn't good. And that translates into being a leader. Sometimes we emulate the way that leaders have taught us to lead or shown us to lead, even if that isn't, or maybe it's because of a corporate culture or a work environment that we're in. And sometimes we follow suit, right? Like if we've ever heard the saying shit rolls downhill at work, right? Like
Mhm.
that's exactly what it means is if you have a bad leader showing you how to be a bad leader, you may continue to emulate that because you don't know differently. And for me, like I learned some of my biggest leadership lessons out of this situation, because it made me do that deep digging and searching. And I led in ways at times that weren't true to me and weren't very good
Yeah.
until I knew better and could apply some of these principles in my own life.
It feels to me like you were drawn into being a super performer, and super performers are never just super performers at work. They're super performers everywhere with their friends, with those two kids, in the relationship with Chad. And so all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but you enter into this thing where you're probably managing, well, the second shift, right? Which is the dentist appointments and the kids pickups and the lunches and all of this stuff in the household that you can do for a certain amount of time at a very high functioning level. And I wonder if you had not had that call from your friend, where would it have blown up at one point or another anyway, or would you have been able to sustain that high functioning, super performing Ginny for another couple of years? What would that have looked like?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. And one of the things I do ask people to unsubscribe from is shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Okay.
So I don't know, right? I don't think it would have been sustainable. I had been noticing signs, but he was such a good manipulator and gaslighter that when I would confront things, it would always get flipped back on me. And then I started questioning reality and not behaving like myself. Um, but that said, one of the things that I tell people or that I encourage people to do is really pay attention, right? And this is what I hope that this helps people do is get more in tune with themselves, get more in alignment with themselves, get to know yourself, be present with yourself, do things with yourself so that you can really get to know. My body was screaming at me that something was wrong. I had abnormal skin cancer lesions removed. My hair broke off and fell out. And I even got shingles on my face in my 30s, which
Um,
is not normal. And so the severity of shingles, which I think sometimes people are like, oh, well, it's just a skin thing. Well, no, it actually is a virus that's attacking your nervous system.
right.
And I had potential, like my doctor, I don't know if you can see on the video, but I have a scar and it'll always have it. Um, that she said, "You are so lucky that we caught this early because when people get shingles on their face where I got it, like in like around your eye area, it has potential to cause you to go blind."
Oh my goodness.
So I my body was literally screaming at me. So I think sometimes when people are in that high performance, overperforming, over functioning, mode, there are other things going on, whether it shows up, as, stress in our bodies in a multitude of different ways. That's just how it showed up for me. So I do think in hindsight, I was starting to, really pay attention and tune into some of the signs. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been open to receiving the information that was shared with me.
Right. Right. It amplified the alarm to the point where your ability to act on it instantly was just right there.
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Activated the alarm.
Hmm. Yeah. Thankfully, this wonderful soma of ours, that somatic awareness, uh, it's kind of whispering and whispering. It's like, yeah, I'm not even listening. And then sometimes it's like, no, I'm keeping score and you're going to feel it somewhere. And this is for your own benefit. Uncomfortable, but that embodied awareness of what's going on, man, it's how we get through life, right?
Yeah.
What I'm not hearing you say is for listeners who are going, yeah, my partner's kind of selfish. I think I would need to block him or her. That's not what I hear. I hear you describing someone that's really at the far end of that spectrum. Could you just kind of help us parse that out a little bit?
Sure. I think also I love to talk about words that get thrown around a little flippantly, like
Hmm.
toxic, right? I just ended a longtime friendship a couple weeks ago. And I wouldn't say, like, I wouldn't sit here and badmouth her or say she's toxic or anything like that. It just wasn't working for me any longer. And so I
Yep.
think, again, it's giving ourselves that freedom, giving ourselves that self-reflection to say things don't have to be bad, right? It doesn't have to be like, oh my gosh, they're the worst person in the world, but maybe it's just run its course, right? Like if you are growing and evolving, not everybody comes along with all of those versions of you. And that's okay. But I think sometimes we do feel this like guilt or shame of, this friendship, I think instead we have to swap that idea of this friendship served its purpose for this time in my life, and I'm grateful for that.
Hmm.
I just can't bring this friendship along with me at this point in my life. And it could be friendship, it could be colleague, it could be work relationship, it could, former colleague, it could be a lot of things. And sometimes people just grow apart. And so it
Hmm.
doesn't always have to be this bad, hard, cold, harsh thing. It can be something that you're still really grateful for, right? And you can still wish people well and want the best for them, even if there's no longer space in your life, because what that does is it creates space for the relationships that really matter to flourish. Now you get to
Right.
invest more time in that. That's healthier, that's better. And then you start to welcome in more of that.
Yeah. I'm thinking about my wife, Teresa, and I have been married for 45 years, and there probably would have been times where certainly she would have said, I need to get out of this thing. And both of us would say at this point that we're having the time of our life
Mm.
for the last like 20 years. So we had some, 25 ones where we had to work at it. But there was never a point in there where either of us said, yeah, toxic, narcissistic, or anything like that. And so I think that knowing when it is one of those that I need to block or mute or swap or whatever, it really matters because we can jettison things that if we would hold on a little bit longer, the real payoff in the relationship can be immense, right?
Yeah. So, like, to me, first of all, do they let toddlers get married in Canada? My goodness, I can't believe you've been married for 45 years.
It is true. We
Uh,
were like both 6 years old. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I think you've been sort of in some sort for 45 years in a manage phase, right? Like you may have moved through, like, maybe there has been a time where you're like, you know what, I need a mute. You're sleeping on the couch,
Yep.
or whatever that looks like. And that's okay. I think when you made the right decision when it comes to a block and a removal of someone is when you feel that relief. That's how you
Right.
know it was the right decision. And again, it doesn't have to be like some big announcement, like I'm going to block you from my life, right? Like it can be just a conscious decision that you make for yourself. And usually you've gone through all of the other steps, right? You've probably, if it's a meaningful, valuable relationship, you've tried to manage that relationship, right? You've
Hmm.
maybe taken a mute and then probably tried to manage it again, right? I don't think that this isn't designed to just make flippant decisions.
No, no, and you're bang on. We live up in that upper left hand quadrant and always have, like,
Yeah.
managing the relationship, managing the emotions, managing the purpose that we have and our identity and all that stuff that's kind of deep, deep soul work that needs to be done.
And expectations, manage expectations is a big
Oh,
one.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for sure. Ginny, question for you. Sometimes you and I have our tried and true things that we always say when we're in front of people, and the person who's interviewing us doesn't have enough sense to ask us, what's that new thing that's just on the edge for you that you're really excited about? And so I don't have the sense to know what that is. But if I were to ask you that question, what is it today that might not be part of your tried and true, it might not be even in the unsubscribe work that you do, but it is a new, in kind of almost embryo, not the right word, but it's an embryo. It's wanting to come out into the world, uh, and you're excited about it, and it's not fully formed, but you would love to talk about it. Is there anything like that in your world today?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, unsubscribe is so new still. The book
Okay,
the
okay.
book came out less than 2 weeks ago. So it is still so
Oh, I
fresh.
did
And I
not
feel
know that.
so it's not even embryo, like we're still just at the birth of unsubscribe. Even though I've been speaking about it for a long time, I did a whole rebrand last year to make my podcast unsubscribe. I'm speaking about it. So I think, for me, what's been really fun, what is in sort of more the infancy stages is, unsubscribe has really gotten me a lot of media attention, being on TV shows, having TV segments, a
Yeah.
ton of speaking stages. And I think what's the newer part of it is I worked with my business coach on unsubscribe. And one of the things that I didn't originally have. And it's a big part of the reason why you and I are having this conversation today. What wasn't part of Unsubscribe was an application for it for teams and leaders. And so
Okay.
that's, I think, one of the things I'm really excited about is, for me leaving corporate, it was this opportunity to no longer be able to contribute to just one organization, but now I get to contribute to many with
Yes.
this message and help many teams, many organizations, many leaders apply this to have more high functioning teams, to make better, faster decisions, to be less busy, right? Like I want to challenge hustle culture. So are we actually, we're busy, but are we actually being productive?
Yeah.
So I think those are some of the things that are still at that like birth, phase, maybe
Yeah.
not embryo, but in
Yeah.
that like infancy stage that are really exciting to me.
If our listeners reach out to you and say, I want to have you work with a number of our teams, what might that look like? Give us a picture.
I can do it in a lot of different ways. So I do a lot of keynotes at big conferences,
Yeah.
associations, national sales meetings for, corporate events. But we can do sometimes I'll do small leadership workshops where, we get in a room and we roll up our sleeves and we put this into practice and application. We can do multiple sessions. So I have a lot of different ways that we can apply it, whether it's,
Hmm.
but I do, even in my keynotes, I can't help it. I love interaction. I love getting people
I bet.
to interact, and we do different activities. So whatever that looks like, it's always engaging. It's always meant to be inspiring and interactive. But yeah, we can do small leadership rooms. We can do retreats. We can do all different kinds of application of it.
I bet you can. Hey, Ginny, what's your beautiful pie? So there's you in front of 500 people. There's you with that leadership team. There's you developing new material. There's you going, out and talking about your book and getting that out into the world. And then there's you potentially doing a lot of introspection and reflection about what's that next thing. Give us a sense for Ginny's Beautiful Pie.
I think you just nailed it.
But what percentage would you say, oh, Brady, if I could do like keynotes, like literally 50% of the time, and then everything else has to sit in the other 50%, like give me a sense for how big the pieces are.
Yeah, I mean, speaking is by far the biggest piece.
Okay.
I mean, I would even say speaking could be 75%. And
Oh,
then,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
And then, but I love these conversations as well.
Mhm.
Books are a big deal, but they're such a small, and like my podcast and my books and my coaching are such a small fraction. And then I like to save a good part of it too for real life application. Like you said, the introspection, like one big swap for me that I've made in my own life is things for experiences. I
Interesting.
want to afford myself the opportunity to travel and
Yeah.
experience different cultures and see different places. So I would actually say that piece of my pie is even bigger than like my books, podcasts, and coaching.
Interesting. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, there's a whole level of contribution to the world that's going to come right out of that, isn't it?
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, it doesn't have to be about contribution all the time. It's like, how can I completely exhilarate in the world and completely enjoy it is another beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think that's what oftentimes high performers and leaders get wrong, right? They're always about outputting and serving everybody
Yeah.
else. But if you aren't prioritizing yourself, you can't be anything to everybody else.
Yeah. Ginny, if people want to get a hold of you, and I'm guessing that they're going to, what's the best way for them?
Everything is ginnypriem.com. So if you want to book me to speak, that's my website.
Okay.
That I'm Ginny Priem on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all the socials.
Beautiful. And Priem, everybody. Yeah. And Ginny. Oh, you got something that's really going to be super helpful and incredibly practical for people. I just didn't realize, I figured it had been around for a long time. I just never looked up when the book had come out. I didn't realize I
It's
was
hot
looking at a
off the
brand new
press.
thing.
It's hot
Yeah.
off the press. You're like
Well,
one of the first to get
that's super
to
exciting.
hear about it.
So,
Yeah.
do you have an audiobook, an ebook, and soft copy, hard copy? What can people get?
Ebook and paperback.
Okay. Yeah. Are you going to do an audiobook?
Oh my gosh, I get asked all of the time to do an audiobook even for my first book. So let me get back to you on that. I will definitely put some thought into it.
You know what's happening here in Ontario, not to date stamp this podcast, but so our premier has basically ordered government workers back to the office. So you can imagine people who were hired 4 years ago with the promise that you will never have to work out of the office because we're not putting that genie back in the bottle. And so there are people who are commuting hours and hours and hours. And what they just love is to be able to get good content and listen to it. So anyway, there's a plug for you to get yourself behind a microphone.
Well, I do have my podcast. So for now, if you want to hear my voice and my amazing guests, you can tune into Unsubscribe with Ginny Priem.
Well, you've also got, and so yes, and you've also got some podcasts that are just taking your content and bringing it to life as well. So I would imagine a ton of the stuff that's in the book is available that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Oh my, I want to get the word out.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time with us today. And oh man, just go and do your thing in the world. You're going to beautify this beautiful planet of ours.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. All right. All the best, Ginny Priem.